I'll start with the question. Who here feels that their ability to buy and supply themselves with the food that they would like to eat, grown in the right conditions at a fair price, is something that they have sorted? Who feels that they're in that position? Okay, one person, which is more or less what I expected. Okay, okay, well done. Three. Very, very few people feel like that, but it shouldn't be too difficult to achieve. What we're going to talk about today is the way in which that should be possible to achieve and how quickly it can be subverted. On Thursday of this week, I went to an event that you may have heard of called Groundswell Agriculture. It's the sort of Glastonbury of farming, if you'll forgive the terrible connotations that could be associated with one of those. But it's now in its ninth year, and it's interesting to see how it's developed from being what was a movement of sincere positivity and a way in which to try and change the broken system of not just farming but also the supply into the food chain and what the consumer is left with. Of course, today the situation is slightly different, but it runs on five principles, which are diversity, livestock integration, protect soil surface, minimise soil disturbance, and maintain living roots. Essentially, it's about the soil, because without the right quality of soil, you're not going to be able to produce anything that is going to do your body any good. And that applies to both crops and, of course, livestock. But, of course, we get very quickly into the position where it looks somewhat like some of these things, which have become rather meaningless over the years, put out to suggest quality or something that you can put a price on. But in actual fact, we see it happening already. So regenerative agriculture has a number of sort of badges attached to it, and you can almost see the bandwagon trundling by as these businesses try to jump aboard the back of it. Now, Groundswell, the event itself, was very well organised, and for that I give them credit. But there was a reason for that, and that's because the organisations that it's partnered with are, by and large, big businesses, and for them to wheedle their way in and start making a difference to things is fairly easy. So I point to NIAB, who were one of the sponsors, and guess who they have just made a relationship with? None other than Jeff Bezos with his Earth Fund. So he's one of those people who now has enough money to consider that he should be spending it by telling people what they should do and how they should do it, and in particular, how they should eat. But ironically, in this particular case, it doesn't really have anything to do with soil, earth, or all the sort of things that would be providing you with good nutrition. Strangely enough, the partnership involves developing sustainable protein alternatives and expanding consumer choice. Doesn't really sound like much of a choice, but he's made a 1 billion commitment to food transformation, and yet these people are partnering with an event that describes itself as being for the promotion of regenerative agriculture. It doesn't quite add up. They go on to say that they're going to be producing cultured meat, precision fermentation, and plant-based protein. And just to give you an idea of what that might look like, there you go, fake burger made of something fake. The other people that were attracted to Groundswell, tellingly, was Chatham House, and Tim Benton spoke at length. And I don't want to take a personal pop at him, because that would not be consistent or fair. But I think I would like to make a point about what he said. Before I do, I'll talk about a document that he put out in 2022 for Chatham House about effectively how to change the system. So in actual fact, to give him credit, he does understand some of the problems. He does understand that farming is destroying landscapes, destroying food ecosystems, and giving us a bad deal in that cheap food is therefore disposable food. It gets thrown away. The cycle perpetuates. We should be able to correct that, and he put forward two versions, one of which was to try and fix the broken system. The second one was to try and change and effectively start again. Obviously, we're veering closer to the build back better sort of area, but nonetheless, the way he talks about it is this. So given that changes in consumption behaviour are necessary to reduce the epidemic of obesity and related diseases, so he concentrates on behaviour, and he did actually say in his talk, which I sat through some of, he said we can change demand, we can change behaviour. So there he is telling us all what he can do, and in particular talking about obesity. Now, this is the personal bit. So he's getting into the sort of psychology of it. And you'd think somebody that is that passionate about it and evidently knowledgeable to a degree would be practicing what he preaches. And this is not a personal attack, but it was an observation. He has a very generous tummy. And if he is standing there trying to shape policy and tell people that they need to change their behavior and stop eating ultra processed foods and wasting food and overeating and all the rest of it, and he's not doing it himself, then he falls into the category of people that we hear from absolutely constantly about what we should be doing, but they're not going to do it. But just to highlight the obesity thing, these are statistics. They are a bit out of date, but I don't think this is going to have changed a huge amount. And I think it is something that's worth saying, because if you do eat properly and you have access to the right sort of food, this does not happen. And you look at any part of the world where the food system is in effect much more simplified than what we see here, and we don't get this. So I think actually most alarming, I would say, is this bit on the right here, how you see that first of all there is a huge percentage of overweight and obese people of considerable youth, but also how quickly that changes once they get beyond the age of 24. I mean, that is quite staggering, and that is entirely due to the system that we have, and of course the subsidy perpetuating it. Anyway, bandwagon I spoke about, and so surprise, surprise, who's jumped on it? Unilever for one, and they're talking about regenerative agriculture, and they're going to do it, and they're going to actually, the world will change because they're going to put in all these practices, and it'll all be better, but they will still produce their sort of fake meat sausages, pot noodles, and Ben & Jerry's ice cream. Nestle, of course, the big guys, still doing Kit Kats and Cheerios and all the stuff full of sugar and more fake stuff, burgers and whatnot. But the point is that the absolute irony, which didn't seem to be grasped by the people that were running or present at this event, was that the whole point of it is that you're trying to deal with soil in such a way that you're not constantly trashing it. And yet their answer immediately is to throw big, very, very expensive machinery at it, and therefore immediately shut out all the people, all the small landowners who should be able to do it properly, but they're not allowed to, because effectively the concept is subverted, and it's then their version of what is regenerative agriculture. And at the NIAB briefing, added to the 5 principles that I showed earlier, she added a 6th, which was context. And of course, what she meant by that was much like we see with international humanitarian law when it comes to the situation in the Middle East, if you write this, you can really mean anything by it. And so this has happened exactly with the regenerative agriculture. Of the other people that were there that I had the chance to speak to were DEFRA, the Rural Payments Agency, and Natural England and the Forestry Commission. And I thought that would be a good one for the UKColumn audience. So it'd be nice to go and talk to them and say, I'm from UKColumn. It'd be very nice to have a recorded conversation with you. Can we talk? And in particular, I said, can we talk about this? Because Natural England have the ability at the moment to, in effect, seize land and designate it under this scheme. And Derek Thomas, Labour MP, well, obviously was a Labour MP, has set up a private member's bill to take this effective power back to DEFRA. And so I wanted to know what Natural England might consider would be the ramifications if this did come to pass and all the rest of it. And quick as a whip, the girl I asked said, "Oh no, I can't talk to you. I can't talk to you because there's a general election." And the election guidance out it popped. I mean, they are so well briefed, and they all said it. And I looked. There were 3 of them there, and we did the. Well, will you talk about it? How about you? Come on. And they all said, no, we're not going to talk about it. And they said, it's because this is in the guidance. The basic principle for civil servants is not to undertake any activity that could call into question their political impartiality. So I thought that was nice. At least, during the general election, we talk about political impartiality. The whole of the rest of the time, absolutely fine. To be completely partial, that's okay. But still, so we did that. Anyway, I talked about the bill, the private members' bill. Of course, actually, the truth of it was they'd never heard of it. So that was why we had to hide behind the screen of the sort of the electoral guidance. Anyway, and the other thing that came up, sorry, I'm rushing a bit because I know we're going over probably on time, but there we go, you're a bit used to that. the other thing which is worth pointing out, again, on the sort of, I suppose, greenwashing side of it and the money making side of it, and how the control mechanisms such as planning, which we all confront in our lives, either because neighbors have controversial planning things, or people complain about something that you should do, and all the rest of it. But biodiversity net gain, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard about and probably do know a significant amount about, but it's just, again, interesting to note that within the concept of regenerative agriculture, which is supposed to be improving the ground, actually, a lot of people, of course, have their eyes out thinking, well, where's the opportunity? What can I make out of this? Rather than what food can I produce for people that will be available to them in the right place at the right time for a fair price. So biodiversity net gain, and I'm not going to read through all this. I think we're probably not quite time, but effectively the point of it is that in the development phase, a developer, of course, who has great clout, the whole big power, big money thing, is able to put forward plan for a development and to offset by saying that there will be a net gain of such and such a percentage. And if they go way over the threshold, which to do so doesn't cost them very much proportionally, is overwhelmingly likely to tip the planning authority towards approving their scheme. So you just see how iniquitous the system is that's been set up, and how we fall foul of all that. Again, just to say, Kraft Heinz, of course, in on it, because of course the other thing was climate, and so again, it's a sales pitch for landowners who can explore options for delivering net gain, and you have your baseline assessment, and it's obviously any increase from there is the sort of the selling point. So the wrap up really is that regenerative agriculture is something I think you're going to hear more about in the public domain in the coming years, but you'll hear about it in a corporate sense, and that's going to mean more money for all the businesses and all the people that already have a lot of money, and still the inability of people in this country, in the developed world, and of course very much increasingly in the developing world, which I've spoken about recently with regard to seeds and fertilizer and that kind of thing. But it's very hard to see how this will actually be countered by people who are, in effect, powerless to resist it. So I hope that gives a sort of a bit of an insight into what's going on in the supposedly regenerative agriculture world. What I would just leave you with is, if you want to know more about how to do it properly, I ran an excellent interview with a guy called Angus McIntosh, who's farming in South Africa. And I would say I don't expect you're going to agree with everything everyone says all the time. That's not realistic. But I would encourage you, if you haven't listened to this interview already, he gives a very, very good idea of how to manage land without subsidy, without any government intervention whatsoever, to get it right and to have his farm workers. He's in the Western Cape in South Africa. He's got his farm workers all, invested in the farm, all eating the right stuff at the right price. So that concludes that segment. Thank you very much.